Hello, welcome back to the nest. And it's the Matchbox Radio with me, Will. And sorry I've not done an episode in a while. It's been a tricky month. Maybe two, I don't know. So back again in the world of music and that kind of place. So Will isn't actually here today, but we'll try and get him on the line. I don't like calling people these things. It makes me nervous.
Hey, Will.
Hi, Will. You're on the show.
What?
You're on the pod.
Am I now?
Yes, you are.
So I'm just here now.
Yeah.
Okay. What do I say?
Anything you like.
Doing a good bit of winter cleaning right now. It's pretty good.
Well,
just in the staircase.
Yeah. It's pretty non-eventful here at the moment.
What have you been talking about so far?
We're only 1 minute 15 in, so nothing.
Oh, so I was your first call.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to say to the listeners?
Winter cleaning isn't as good as you think.
Okay.
That's all for me, David.
Bye, Will.
Bye.
That was Will. Our first and probably only call on the show. Sorry if the signal was a bit bad there. Or at least not a nice place to call people. Weird place to live. So there's actually musical things today. Talking about tips for creating your podcast. I've got a few. So the tip number one, I guess. So if you're EQing your audio, that is the number one thing you want to think about. If your audio quality isn't amazing, your podcast may sound less pleasing to the ear. It's always nice to have just a nice bit of mixing, a little bit of EQ here and there, just to snap up your vocals. So in my effects train, I will start off with Effector Silencer from Kuasa. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. And basically it's a noise reduction plugin, and so just because you will get background noise. I mean, chances are, if you're just starting on a podcast, you're not gonna have like universal audio arrow. I mean, you might do. I don't know. But yeah, there will be a little bit of background noise. It might be your fan from your laptop, your air conditioner, whatever it is. There will be background noise. So if you can get that out, it just makes your audio sound a lot cleaner than it already is. So that's the first plugin in my effects train. The second one is a bit of Ozone 8 Elements. Not for any mastering per se, it's just so I can turn the audio track to mono, because I do use two Behringer C2 pencil microphones in a stereo field. Because they are really small diaphragm condensers, there's only like part of it. Sorry for hitting the pop. You have to be exactly on point with what you're talking. So I tend to use two, and then turn it to mono, and it just gives me a little bit of a wider field. But I do like these mics. That's why I've not gone to a wider diaphragm microphone. But if you've got a wider one, obviously you don't need to use that for turning it to mono. After that, I have a compressor. It's just a regular Ableton compressor, and I just use it to just get the vocals a bit louder, because I do record them quite quietly at a gain of about 50%. So I don't want them too loud, but I don't want them too quiet. And if your vocals are distorted, it's not like you can fix them. But if they're too quiet, you can always just turn the gain up a bit. After that, I have a limiter, because if there are a bit of clipping in your vocals, obviously you're gonna want to fix that. So just minus 0.1 limiting. I don't go to 0 because I find that's it. It's that a little bit too loud. So if you go minus 0.1, it's probably the best place. After that is another Ozonite Elements plugin, and this one I do use EQ for, and there's a particular curve that I use, which is I actually stole, not stole, magpied from somebody that I've watched on YouTube. I'll link his video in the description of this podcast episode. And after that, I just have a regular EQ. I boost the lows a little bit, just so it's a bit more a boomy radio voice, but the rumble has already been cut out, so it's not going to be as harsh. Then I put down the mids, turn up the highs. That's what I used to use before I actually used Ozonite with that. And that's literally the whole of my chain. That's about it. And I will have another track for music. It'll just be turned down. I'll also have a compressor on that for sidechain to the vocals, because obviously you don't want to have like inaudible music when there's no vocals in, but you also don't want to have it too loud when you're actually speaking. So another podcast tip is, if you want to actually publish your podcast for free, there's a website called Anchor.fm. That's the thing I actually use, and you get your podcast put out for free on every single platform. Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Podbean. I never even heard of that before I started using Radio Public. Basically, it's everywhere, and they have a really good service, and you can actually record your podcast on that website if you don't have a DAW to do so. But I would recommend just downloading one of the free DAWs. If you got an Apple Mac computer, then you can download GarageBand for free, and you've got all the basics there. If you've got Microsoft computer, there's so many. I'd recommend SoundBridge. It's free, completely free. Comes with its own built-in effects. If you do want to use it for making music, you will have to put in your own VST instruments, but that shouldn't be a problem if you're just using it for a podcast. And tip number 3, it's probably the most important, is your image for your podcast. If people are searching up a podcast they already know, or just a keyword, you want to make yours stand out. You need to have a nice high quality image, which I recommend making on a website called canva.com. You can make so many stuff on there. You can make album covers, you can make profile, but you even make like Instagram posts on there. I don't really know why you want to, but you can. And then so I made my logo on there, and completely free, and it's a really high quality image as well. And in terms of another first impression is the description of your podcast. You want to be able for people to read that and know what your podcast is about. You don't want to rely on the description of your podcast too much, though. People might not fully take that in when you're talking in your episode. You also want that to be quite informative in terms of what your podcast is about, because people are going to be on their phones, on, the Apple Podcast app. They're going to click on your episode. And it's that first impression that will bring in what should hopefully be a full audience for you. Because you really don't want to be too ambiguous with what your podcast is about. In terms of the description of particular episodes, I keep that as short as you can, as people will look at the episode and you'll be able to see a brief sample of the description of it, but you don't want to make it too short, so it's too brief, but make it so the first few words start to tell you what it's about. Don't say, "Oh, hi, welcome to another." You want to have that as first sentence. Just give a quick overview. People click on the episode, and they can read the full description and get a bit more information if they like what they see. In terms of podcast tips, that's about it. Music. Choose music that everybody will be fine to have in the background. If you produce your own, that's probably the best thing to do. But yeah, just make sure it's as chill as possible. You don't want to have some upbeat music in the background if you're talking about, art, a piece of art. maybe you do. I don't know. But make sure it fits the mood of your podcast. It's always good. Another thing, if you are recording outside where you'd normally record, make sure you are in a room where there's not going to be so much echo, because obviously people don't want that. Don't have much background noise. You don't be inside like a cafe. If you've listened to my podcast before, you know I've done that before, and you might not have liked that, but I don't think I'll make that same mistake again. Yeah, so in terms of tips, that's basically all I can give. There might be another episode on this, I don't know. So I hope you enjoyed this nice short edition of the Matchbox Radio. Yeah, there's just a few tips on how to create your podcast. And yeah, I shall see you in the next episode. Goodbye.